Yes. So an addicted person, how she will do the inquiry? That was the question, right? Will you like to rephrase or add something there, Dr. Kaur?
Besides this addiction in any field, like we are having the usual pattern in our life of overthinking or whatever, uh, feeling more, stability of moods and
Yes, yes,
emotional. In that sense, also, how can we, bring inquiry into it so that more holistic living can be realized?
yes. So whether the inquiry is possible in an individual who is addicted and who is not. So it's a question that who is not addicted in any form. It's not about the alcohol addiction. It could be any of the choices, the addiction of choices. So whether an addicted person to any choices can rekindle the inquiry or not. So the first step of rekindling the inquiry is coming out of this denial that it's okay to be addicted. It's a state of denial. If that individual is concluding that it's okay to be addicted, then the inquiry cannot be rekindled by that individual. So the first and foremost state of being is to be inquisitive about the state of individual, whether that particular state of being. Yes.
How do we define addiction for ourselves for that purpose?
Yes, yes, yes. So addiction is a fixation of a choice.
I cannot do without it.
Yes. So when I fixate myself to a particular choice, I'm addicted to it. And that's the pattern of any choice per se. In subtlety, perhaps. In many cases, it is in subtle form with a lot of bargaining of languages that we do. But we wrap underneath the languages, we wrap our choices. We propose that it is not a choice, but it is actually affecting me internally. So that one has to answer to oneself, not to anybody else, whether it is a choice of mine or not. Choice in any modality or any intensity, choice of any intensity is an addiction, is a form of addiction. Can you understand this?
So it is, just want to clarify, it is not a natural selection that I have made at any given point of time.
Yes.
It is a choice. Like I choose pizza over pasta. Means anytime I am given pizza and pasta in front of me, both of them are unnatural, I know, but I'm just saying that for an example's sake, that I have a fixation that I will choose pizza over pasta. So that's
before. So what is the choice?
Yeah.
This is a very meaningful example. So how to identify whether it is a choice or not? Before it is presented, I have decided I am going to pick up whatever you said.
Yes.
Pizza.
So it's an addiction.
It's a choice and an addiction. So it's a planned strategic move to choose the pizza. Or suppose if it is abruptly presented and you ended up choosing pizza, which is not carried forward and which was not planned before or after. That's a natural selection, which is not carried forward. And carried forward or pre-planned is that sensation, is that conclusion that one is making. That becomes a choice.
fine.
So coming back to the question that if someone is addicted, whether he can rekindle the inquiry or not. Now, the first and primary question to ask that individual, whether that individual is sensing the need of inquiry in life. If that individual is in denial that no, inquiry is not needed, these are all bullshits, then it cannot be rekindled. But the beauty here is that an individual who is leading a choice full life or addicted life is not always overwhelmed with choice. Is not always overwhelmed with choice, has choices in life, but there are spells in life where the influence of choice is lesser. At that point in time, the understanding of inquiry, how it will come, that cannot be predefined, that cannot be pre-planned. But there is always a possibility of one identifying the importance of inquiry. And the moment one identifies the importance of inquiry, inquiry starts. And the possibilities of reversing all this action-wise derailment happens. Yes, Binal. I thought Binal is unmuting.
I had a doubt about the suppression and stimulation of pleasure and pain, wherein you mentioned that if it is the natural pleasure and pain, then there is the internal regulation that happens, self-regulation with the chemistry within the body. When we are doing it by stimulating and modifying the external, then it is the chemical modification in the input itself that is how it is.
Yes, that is impacting my chemical also. That is impacting my chemical domain also. And it is not because of the chemical to chemical only, but the idea behind that chemical is accepted by me in form of believing it.
And why did we not cover only idea in that stimulation of pleasure and
No,
pain?
there is definitely an impact of chemical that happens mutually, because it is the question that was asked that a medicine is popped in and the headache is gone. How that is achieved? Because it is a lab tested, experimented reverse engineering. It's a product of reverse engineering, and the chemical reaction cannot be denied. It's very much physically happening. So you liking the pizza at the tongue level may not be denied, but even then you are not ultimately drifting towards pizza because of your depth of understanding. So when you look at pizza, the taste is well identified, but other truth gets revealed when you look at deep, that these are not attractive. I'm sensing an attraction. It is a fooling activity. It's a bluffing activity. It's as if that plastic smile of air hostess we discussed, the smile is a smile. If you click a picture, then there will be hardly any difference between a plastic smile and a natural smile. But when you look deep, the things revealed. Then you identify that this smile is a smile, okay, but it is not impacting me at the sensational level. Similar goes to the food also, when we have that clarity.
So we covered only the external modification. How about just fantasizing and imagining only at the idea level?
That's a perennial impact at the sensational level. So the chemical impact which is coming, which has got an end, But what remains with us is that fantasy, the fantasy element, the ideated sensation remains with me. The spike that you mentioned, that's a chemical spike, that remains for few seconds, perhaps very limited duration, but the memory of that is carried forward, approving that particular pleasure as if it's a valid pleasure, it's an actual pleasure, but it is a morph pleasure, conditional pleasure. We block that understanding. Does that answer, or somewhat drifted?
Figuring out internally how is that regulation, the self-regulation that was going on within the body, how is that going for a toss when there is an idea element, or whether there is modification in the physical?
Yes, that regulation is always energy driven. Any activity is energy driven. When I'm zapped with my energy, then I don't have any further energy capability left to regulate it. The natural regulation goes for a toss because of the stimulation. Because this requires a certain amount of energy to execute the regulation. When I stop consuming the mango, which is termed as a regulation here, it needs a certain amount of energy to be available within, to respond to this extra consumption, that no, I don't need it now. This saying no needs some energy. And under the wrap of stimulation, this denial of pain is happening. So I'm not able to sense the pain anymore because of the overwhelming stimulation. And that is what is another term is their indulgence. When we are indulged into stimulated pleasure, the sense of pain goes away. Sense of pain goes away. And these are very important sensations, pain and pleasure. Sensing pain and sensing pleasure is very much important to lead a life. These are the voices of organism. If we mutilate the sense of pleasure and pain in terms of stimulation and suppression respectively, then the very own capability of a living organism is mutilated. Do we see it? Now, yes, this particular statement, reinstatement of inquiry. Actually, earlier.
Before we go further,
Yes,
excuse
Renuka.
me.
Yes, please.
Before we go further, I have a doubt still
yes.
on the previous slide.
Yes.
I'm not able to make out what is physical hedonism and psychological hedonism. If pleasure and pain both are psychological, then what is physical hedonism?
Pleasure and pain is not psychological. It's a P2.
As in,
P2.
both are at the sensation level.
Sensation
pleasure
level.
And pain both.
Yes.
So then what is?
So sensation can be impacted physically, can be impacted mentally. Do you understand this statement?
Yes.
Sensation is the P2. It can be impacted from P1. It can be impacted from P3. Both. When it is impacted from P1, then the sensation that is happening.
So if I'm eating a mango and getting the pleasure, then it is physical. And if I'm thinking of the mango and then getting some pleasure out of it, then it is psychological.
Yes.
Is that?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's a psychological hedonism. That there is no physical reason, but I am getting a feel-good sensation within me. Be it a mango or a pizza, doesn't matter.
Fine. Okay, we can go ahead.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm not very clear. I understood what Dr. Kaur had asked about that person who's already addicted on inquiry, on
Can
his
be
being
reinstated or not?
Yes,
Can be
are we going to be
reinstated?
doing it more in
Yeah.
the next?
That will be reinstatement may cover, but definitely we can revisit it. See, the primary question is whether that individual at any point in time, because that individual will not be addicted to the substance addiction, will have its spells. There will be spells of that individual not under the influence of that substance. At that point in time, does that, so if somebody is having a problem, suppose a conflict, let's not term it as a problem, but a conflict. If that individual is considering this conflict is a very valid thing for life, then how can that conflict be reversed? Because it is being justified within that individual. So if that individual is justifying that addiction, then there cannot be any reinstating of inquiry for that individual. But the good news is that individual will come to a normal state in some time of the day, and that time there could be some inputs of inquiry where that individual may start considering that it is a conflict. I have to look at it. And this looking at the conflict as conflict.
He himself has to do it, or anybody can instill and
he has to
start it for him.
That individual has to
all alone. How would he do if he would have done it beforehand only if he could?
Yeah, that cannot be answered, ma'am. So here again we are trying to bring some external condition to make it happen. I understand the very meaning of this question, that can we make some arrangement for that individual so that he can reinstate himself? And that actually brings me to this slide. This slide actually, when I wrote in the morning, I wrote reinstating inquiry. Try and understand the difference of the statement. I wrote reinstating inquiry. Then I started inquiry.
Not doing it.
Yes. Now,
someone is not doing it.
When it is being done, then it is as if reinstating. But here, what is the more pertinent question? Whether the reinstating or the reinstatement can be possible or not. That's an inquiry that we have to do altogether. Whether reinstatement is possible or not. How can we reinstate? That will bring a lot of condition. If I go for a checklist, okay, if somebody is addicted, do these things for him so that the inquiry can be reinstated, which is very much hypothetical. What can be a possibility, a tentative possibility of the individual? Suppose you have an intent that, okay, if I have a co-passenger in my inquiring journey, then my inquiry gets deepened. This is always a knack of inquirer, to have more inquirer along so that the perceptory domain gets expanded. Do we understand this? Binal, can you explain? So you are tired?
No. Yeah, it's like a collaboration that everyone is spatially in a unique space and time. So yes. I can only see so much. And when I have other people around joining me in that inquiry, it kind of broadens up and I get to see their revelations also. I mean, through sharing, through conversation, it just gets revealed, which otherwise would not have been possible for me to.
Yes. So this is a journey of inquirer. You understand? The journey of an inquirer, when there is a group inquiring agendalessly, then a lot of revelations can happen, because everyone has their own revelation which is shared in the group, and as a cumulation, everybody gets benefited with that revelation. So if I am an inquirer, definitely I will look at another individual. If he also can be inquirer, I will get benefit of that inquiry as well, in deepening my understanding. So an alcoholic person also, if can be an inquirer, I'm getting benefited. So there is no denial to the extension of help to become inquirer, be it an alcoholic person or any other individual whoever is interested to be inquirer, is most welcome in a journey of inquiry. Are you able to understand this, Silpi? So now I am available to that addicted person to so-called quote unquote help him, actually helping myself to have deepened my further progression of understanding. So that collaboration can happen, and if through my inquiry, which I am not intending to showcase and influence or motivate him, but as a natural knack, I am an inquirer and interacting with that individual, and my reflection of my inquiry is hit to that individual. There could be a possibility he asks you back that how do you do this? Can I also do? I see a lot of freedom in your conversation, in your proposal. It's seemingly there is a lot of freedom that you are experiencing. Can I have that? How can I have it? Then you can share your understanding about the inquiry process. That might rekindle, but not guarantee. Like in case of your child, the same thing can happen to an addicted person. Are you able to comprehend, Shilpi?
Yes.
So that's the reason this statement got rephrased as reinstatement of inquiry, not reinstating the inquiry. Shanta, are you able to understand the difference between these two comments? Reinstating the inquiry and reinstatement of inquiry. So what we are trying to understand, how the reinstatement of inquiry happens naturally.
Yeah.
We are not intending to reinstate inquiry in anyone. Does that make sense? Like,
what is reinstatement? Restatement of inquiry?
Reinstatement means resuming the inquiry which got suppressed. So an innate capability which I had, but due to a lot of conditioning which I have accepted myself, my inquiry got suppressed. Yes, Pina.
So reinstating has some intention in it, and reinstatement happens as a consequence, as a byproduct.
Yes. There I sense some intention that reinstating inquiry, as if I'm taking the responsibility to reinstate inquiry for someone, or for that matter for myself. You know, this is again, if I want to inquire, I'll not be able to inquire. I need to understand what is inquiry, then this may happen in me. It is not to become an IIT engineer, you know, that I can read this book and this way I can prepare and I can qualify. This is not that journey.
So what is the statement of inquiry?
What is the statement? No, that statement, okay.
The statement word is there in that in statement.
That statement is not the statement word. It is a reinstatement, means reinitiating. Can anyone explain the other synonym? Shilpi, Vinal, anyone?
Rekindling.
Rekindling, restarting, resuming. The word reinstatement means resuming.
And because it is innate in us. So when we were born, we were naturally curious and naturally inquiring. And somewhere it got suppressed, and therefore redoing.
So I think reinitiating is the synonym that we are trying to mean. Dr. Kaur, could you understand? Okay. Now, in the process of inquiry, the choicelessness is a byproduct. This is an important, and I remember Arav asked this question during one conversation. Arav is Shilpi's son, that choicelessness is also a choice. So when we propose a choicelessness, that itself is a choice, you see. It's very, very important understanding. If I make a choice of choicelessness, then it is not a choicelessness.
A person cannot make a choice of choicelessness.
Now,
He can
suppose
make
all
the
these
choice
discussion,
of choices. Only after the inquiry,
yes,
the choices drop.
yes, that's the beauty of
Then
the
that's
inquiry. So
Yeah.
when we talk a lot about choicelessness,
In the
then,
beginning, we cannot choose choicelessness. isn't it?
yes, yes. If we choose, then how can it be choiceless? If we choose to become choiceless, then how it is a choiceless? Are we able to comprehend, Renuka?
That's just the theoretical understanding of choicelessness.
Yes, yes.
When we actually experience the choicelessness, that is the real choicelessness.
Yes,
Then
if we
it is with an agenda to be choiceless, is then that is not a,
that itself is a choice.
yeah.
So that is why the understanding of inquiry is very much important. Inquiry, when inquiry is happening, there is no blockage in the progression of exploration. And all the blockages are actually points of choices. If I'm an inquirer, then I'm perennially non-conclusive. Perennially non-conclusive. Whatsoever is appearing externally, that, okay, this selection you have done, which can be considered as a choice, no matter what you consider, you consider. But I'm internally not choosing anything, I'm continuing with my inquiry. I'm continuing the exploration, which I'm structured to do. When I'm continuing in the path of inquiry, then the choicelessness is a byproduct. As Dr. Kaur says,
Kalyan,
the
do
choice is
other
flawed.
species, they also, do they inquire at a different level, lower level,
Yeah,
maybe the animals?
Yeah,
you
Binam?
know, and if it's an ant, if it's just going around, and then if I put my finger to block it, it would still then find some way out to just go over it. Or so I see that even there is choicelessness in whatever comes, and there is adaptability to the situation.
So
That
is
can be
it
considered as inquiry.
At a physical level,
that
that
is
is
an
what they're doing.
inquiry?
Yes, so animals are by default inquirer, but they have lesser capability of inquiry. You know, like children. Children do have this knack of inquiry. You look at a child, the child is always full with questions. Lot of questions, question after question. This is the knack of inquiry, knack of exploration. But due to the limited neurological growth, the progression of inquiry cannot become optimum for a child, like in case of animals
Because
also.
we block it, we as adults and surroundings.
Not only that,
encourage.
Not only that, ma'am, but the neurological structure of a child is always growing. You know, it's not matured enough to go deeper. So they have the knack of inquiry, but the capability of inquiry is missing there. Same goes for animals. It's quite similar. The inquiry in children and inquiry in animals are quite similar. Those are physically driven. Those are
Like
physically driven, neural. Yeah.
It's the structure that it is not yet, for
Evolved.
children it's developed. Yeah.
Yes. So the structural support is missing to go. So here is no competition or comparison that we are trying to bring, but definitely an ant will go up to a limited depth of anything comparing to human. It's not a competition or demeaning the ant in any way. We're just mathematical understanding of the depth we are trying to explore. So that way
The
animals are
knack of
inquired.
it, yeah, the knack of inquiry, why didn't it go on growing in spite of everything, in spite of the blockages? Why the knack did not continue growing as we grew up?
Because of the
Why
capturing
it
of
was
energy.
lost?
Because of the capturing of energy. And we discussed about the framework of the psychological hedonism. You know, we go into stimulating the pleasure and suppressing the pain that engages the energy, and then inquiry needs certain amount of energy. If I am not left with that energy, how can I progress in my inquiry? I'll definitely get enervated and
So
stop.
inquiry needs a lot of energy.
Yes,
Free energy.
availability of energy is very much needed for inquiry. But while inquiring, you know, it's an effortless process. Availability of energy is very much there for inquiry. But while inquiring, it doesn't need a lot of energy to involve in the process of inquiry. It's just the support of the availability of energy that
Are
is
you
needed.
saying
So
it needed to reinstate or restart it, the energy is needed, but what it is
availability of energy
after,
is very much needed. Availability of energy.
to start the inquiry, the energy is
Yes,
needed.
yes, yes.
Can we say that?
Yes, to rekindle,
Yes.
to explore anything, we need that availability of energy. That energy support is very much needed. But in the process of energy, it is this process of inquiry. It is, you know, like since I'm from aviation, I'll bring an example of the aircraft. So aircraft, when it gets started initially, that initial cranking, we call it, the term is used, initial cranking. It needs an energy support externally in many in the bigger aircrafts, and most of the fighter aircrafts also. The external power supply is needed for the initial cranking. After that cranking is given, when the turbine starts rotating, it gets self-sustained. Then the power gets disconnected and it will move. So it's quite similar. The initial restart, because of the suppression, the inquiry is completely suppressed and one is depleted. So if that depletion is removed, then there is a possibility of rekindling.
It also sounds similar to the, I've always had this healing crisis. When there is not enough energy, the healing crisis cannot begin.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes.
And
even in the process of healing crisis is not an instant process. It requires a certain duration, and for that duration, one is actually tired and down to support the energy needed for healing crisis.
But then again, the same thing, that if one does not have the energy, then the inquiry cannot happen. And when inquiry cannot happen, then one does not have the energy. So it's like a vicious cycle like that.
Yes, in itself. In itself. Yes. I think we have to start at this slide in the next session, because few seconds are left. So I'm immediately initiating 5 minutes of silence. Let's rejoin.